Welcome to Branching Out, Growing Together, the podcast that brings you inspiring stories from people ready to take bold steps, grow new opportunities, and transform their land or careers into something extraordinary. Hosted by Melanie Jones, each episode features farmers, entrepreneurs, and visionaries sharing their journeys of discovery and growth. Whether you're dreaming of starting your own farm or looking for new ways to cultivate success, you're in the right place. It's time to branch out and grow together.
Hey, today's guest is Scott Smith of Angle Acres Farms located in Michigan. Scott's father, Bruce, was an early pioneer and innovator in bringing chestnuts back into the forefront in the United States. Now Scott and his family are carrying on this mission. We packed a lot into this conversation today, touching on everything from Scott assuming the responsibility of cataloging chestnut cultivars in the United States. He took on this responsibility from Dr. Sandy at the University of Connecticut. We talk about his viewpoints on grafted trees versus seedlings, chestnut harvesting and different processing methods, and what drives Scott to invest energy almost every single day into his farm and their orchards. I am amazed at the number of people that are involved in driving change in the chestnut community. It is so rewarding to tell these stories. If you or someone you know has an interesting story related to the chestnut community to share here on the podcast, please reach out and enjoy this one. Well, good morning, Scott. Thank you for joining in and sharing a little bit about your story and passion.
Well, thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. So your journey is a little bit different than a lot of people I talk to, and that is that you spent a good bit of time in Romania on a missionary endeavor. And so let's just start there. What was that like?
It was wonderful. I took in after my two different visits to the country and to see what was going on, and then moving my whole family over there in 2000. It was an experience that it's hard to explain. Going from a one culture to another culture, um, life-changing experience.
And it's not like you were there for 6 months, right?
Yeah, I was there for 12 years.
Wow.
And in those 12 years, of course, I had to build the house that I was in, and was that was a project. You know, I'm still doing the ministry as well as building a home for my family.
Yeah.
And then, of course, doing the ministry in those 12 years, we started 5 churches. One of them did fail, but the other ones are still going.
So were you fluent in the language you needed to speak?
Towards in the beginning, no, because Romanians wanted to learn English more than I wanted to learn Romanian. So they were practicing on me their English. But eventually I had to learn the Romanian language as well as some Hungarian.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you were there, did you happen to have a chestnut?
My introduction to European chestnuts was walking down the street and finding a one of those roasting guys along the street just roasting chestnuts. They rotated them on charcoal fires and they handed it to you in a paper cone, and they were okay. They were not the same as the ones that I had experienced on the farm, but they were okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
So
just opened my mind because the Europeans have been at chestnuts way, way longer than we have. I did see some trees in Romania that were 6, 7 feet in diameter. They
oh
were
my God.
huge trees, ugly, but they were huge.
Yeah, yeah. And how do they harvest them there? Like,
They hand pick them all.
yeah,
A
okay.
very In Romania, they're hand picked. You get into Italy and Spain and Portugal, there is mechanical applications over there, but in Romania, it was all hand.
Okay, yeah. Well, and the thing is, listeners, that it wasn't Scott's first encounter with chestnuts because your dad, Bruce, basically was a pioneer in the chestnut industry in the US. And so how was your childhood with your dad around chestnuts?
So in the mid 70s, a salesman showed up selling nuts, and my dad planted them alongside the granary, and they sprouted up. And the next year, we transplanted them out in the orchard. not knowing anything about spacing or any of that. So we planted them 20 on 30. And years down the road, we found out that was too close.
Yeah.
And since then, everything that we planted since the original planting has always been 30 on 30.
Okay.
And so with that experience, we learned how to graft trees and transplant and fertilizing and everything else that needs to go along with them.
Mm-hmm. Um, I know you mentioned one time that your dad worked with Greg Miller of Route 9 and Empire Chestnuts. Uh,
Yes, the I can't give you the exact year that that all happened, but somehow Dad got a hold of Greg Miller, and with that contact, Dad bought some trees from Greg that we have on the farm now.
yeah.
That was just to re-enter, that was to introduce I would suppose, a different cultivar because the ones that we had were colossal. And
Okay.
we didn't know anything about colossal, just like nobody else did either. And since then, some of us have chosen not to go the colossal route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I think there's a lot of colossals in Michigan, probably because that's just the tree that got started back
Yep,
in the day, and you don't want to really cut them down.
correct.
Um, yeah, I like to say Greg Miller, and Greg, if you're listening, he pops up in almost every single podcast that's produced. That's how far his reach goes.
Yeah,
But
well, see,
yeah,
I had reached out. When I was trying to go a little bit bigger, I had started reaching out to different places to find some cultivars, and I ended up calling Greg myself, not knowing or not remembering that my dad had reached out to him, and I said, "Well, here we are, full circle, 40 years later."
yeah, it's that kind of industry. And so, okay, let's talk about what does Angle Acres Farm look like today?
Angle Acres is a 200-acre dairy farm that we no longer do dairy. It has been now it's cash crop, corn, beans, and hay, with 25 acres at the moment of chestnut trees.
Okay.
Those chestnut trees are anywheres from mid 70s, which would make them close to 50 years old, all the way up to trees that are 3 years old.
Yeah. Is that just an exhilarating feeling walking through those 50-year-old trees?
Yeah, so I did get an invitation to go to Pennsylvania that last year in 24 to I went and visited the core chestnut farm. They've been
Okay.
around
Yep.
since the 60s. Largest chestnut trees I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
The largest. They were, and he walked me through his orchard and how they process and where their nuts all go. It was he his what he does would never work for me, and what I do would never work for him. But it was exhilarating to see such an old orchard producing so many nuts. He has a
Yes.
huge volume of nuts.
Yeah, that is just, I mean, that's why we're in it. And I love the thing that you said too, like what he and his team do versus what you and your team does and what we do. It can all be different. And that's the creative element of it, I think.
And I think we can all learn from each other on how to do this, and most small independents, um, their fall down is that they don't have a market.
Yeah.
We all think we can grow something, and we can. We plant 10 zucchini plants, and oh man, what are we going to do with all these zucchinis?
That's a
So
great that's a great example right there because that's for sure for zucchini. Um, okay, so and then you do not live super close to your farm.
no, when I came back from Romania, um, I was offered a job here in Wisconsin, and Dad says, you might as well take it. Your sister's running the farm here, and things are fine. And so as Dad would come over here and visit, he ended up hitting a restaurant that was owned by a Greek. Then they got talking about chestnuts, and Dad said, "You need to take some chestnuts to this guy." And so I did. I asked him about where he was getting them. He said, "I got them out of Chicago." And I said, "Where?" And he told me, and I contacted Chicago, and they said, "We'll take all you can give us." Because they like local. Nothing wrong with European, except they're a month and a half old before they get here.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
we all know if you're in the market first, the early bird gets a worm. And I'm
Hmm.
after all the worms I can get.
It's always fun, listeners, to talk to so many people that have chestnuts in production that sell out. And that's been your case too, right?
Every year. I don't have any carryover per se, except for some of the little ones, which really is a hard market to get rid of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, okay, so then if we go to the trees that you have, there's always a conversation about the difference of grafted chestnut cultivars and seedling trees. Um, tell me about that.
So our orchard has both. Um, I'm not I'm not for or against grafted or seedlings. I think they both work in harmony with each other. Um, a high percentage of our mature trees are grafted. Just because we wanted the diversity within the orchard to be able to accommodate all different types of weather conditions and the time of the year as chestnuts drop, because they don't all do it at the same time. I did plant over the last couple of years 600 seedlings, to which those are going to be, some of those will be grafted into other cultivars to provide a different volume of pollen to help the trees along.
So if we talk about that process, the seedlings grow what, a year or two, and then
So I will go to tree X. I will collect the nuts from that because I know what that tree is. The nut is only going to be 50% of that tree. I will plant that nut. I will grow it a year. The following year in the spring, which is right now,
mhm,
I will go back and I will collect all my Sicon wood off tree X. I will take that grafting material and graft it back into that seedling, because the tree is 100% of whatever it is. The nut is 50% of the mother tree. And the acceptable, they do not reject. I have a high in the high 90s of success rate on grafting.
yeah, that's fantastic. Um, we talked about, we have this little series, Field Notes from the Farm, of taking a visit to see your place and capturing a little bit of what you're doing. And so I look forward to doing that possibly in August, and we'll share
Uh,
that with the audience.
yeah,
Um,
we've just a side note, we did have the University of Missouri come out to the farm just prior to COVID. And that was at the request of Tom Wall.
okay.
And so I got a hold of the university. They came out and they walked our orchard, and they found some trees that they thought, wow, these are great. My dad has a book, we call it the Chestnut Bible. Every tree has been recorded in the orchard every year. Tree one, row one, tree two, row whatever. And dad had a criteria of what that tree did every year. The university looked at that and said, you've got more information on cultivars than we do.
Yeah.
And so that's why they chose some of our trees, and it's done a DNA check, and we'll go into that a little later.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good. You do you remember being 10 years old and planting trees with your dad?
Yeah, it was not something I enjoyed because dad made me do it. I had other things to do as a 10-year-old, but we went out and we planted the trees in rows. And then we had an old bulk tank that we put on a wagon, and that's how we watered them every week or however it was. And we went along and doing that. Dad set me out in the orchard with a 22 at the age of 10 years old, shooting squirrels and anything else that would come along trying to disturb the chestnuts.
Yeah, that part you didn't mind as much, probably,
Oh, that
right?
was great.
Um, okay, then another topic as orchards start to really, get into production, there's the idea of how to harvest them. And I was worked on a podcast the other week where we talked about in the early 1900s, there was advancements in mechanization of harvesting equipment, but primarily for row crops. And so the chestnut was left behind a little bit, not to mention the blight was in effect at that same time. So many operations in the US still are doing hand picking and U-pick. So talk to us about the difference of U-pick, which I know you're a fan of, but also mechanization of harvesting.
Yeah, so our orchard started out with just hand picking with my family because it was just us. No one in the neighborhood knew anything about chestnuts, and they always wondered what the Smiths are doing over there. And so as the orchard began to mature, we had too many nuts to deal with on our own, and we put out signs along the highway on hay wagons, hey, you pick chestnuts. And we would get curious people that had no idea what they are. They would show up and, oh, these are really good. Well, we would roast chestnuts right out in the orchard and give them a taste. Now they weren't 100% mature, but they still tasted great right out of the orchard. It helped to promote ourselves. And as I took the orchard into more of a commercial direction, Dad and I decided that we should find another method of harvesting.
Hmm.
There are very few options for picking up chestnuts. FACMA has a machine. I think Michigan State or CGI has one of those. But the guys out in California were using hazelnut machines, and I guess they worked. I don't know. I've talked to a couple of them. They said they did all right. Well, we ended up buying a chestnut harvester that came out of Italy.
Okay.
Um, Quite an expensive machine. Not everybody could probably afford one, but we got it at 50% because another farmer had it and he had passed on, his wife sold it to us. And so we learned how to use it. It, if I want to, we have 13 acres that are in production really good. If I was to put 10 people out in that orchard, it would take them probably 2 days to collect the entire orchard. I can do it in about 2 hours.
Oh yeah. So it is life changing.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
do you still have you pick as part of it for
So I'm not a tech guy, so my daughter does all this out on Facebook, and she publishes according to how the orchard is doing during the season, giving updates as to when our first date is going to be. Generally, that's the first weekend in October.
hmm.
This year it was earlier because of the dry season, but usually it's generally the whole month of October.
But yeah, so you're doing both. You're using
Yes.
your equipment. Okay.
So,
Um,
we only do U-Pick on Fridays and Saturdays. And then at the end, I don't collect any nuts Tuesday and Wednesday because I want the U-Pickers to have some.
yeah.
And I spend a little more time up in the orchard chasing the deer off those couple of days before the U-Pickers get there. But after the U-Pickers are done on Saturday, I run through the orchard with a harvester and pick up everything else
Okay. And you do that every day for a week or two?
every day.
Every day. Yep.
I don't let nuts sit on the ground more than 24 hours except for the U-Pick stuff. And there are two reasons. One is that the critters are going to get them if I don't. The
Yep.
other one is that I want to have a clean orchard floor because there is a terrible pest out there called the chestnut weevil. And they survive on trash that has been left on the ground, and so my orchard has no trash. If you were to come with if you just end up coming to our farm and walking through the orchard, I keep it mowed tight like a golf course. uh,
Okay. Beautiful. Rewarding, beautiful, and effective, right?
People often ask Brad and Melanie Jones what a UMCA PQK seedling is. The University of Missouri Center for Agroforestry seedlings descend from an orchard with three well-characterized grafted cultivars. Peach, Ching, and Cork, the orchard environment generated a seedling population of three full sibling families. As an approved growing partner for the university, Brad and Melanie are thrilled to offer the UMCA PQK seedlings from their Kentucky-based nursery, United Chestnut. Visit unitedchestnuts.com for more information about this seedling and others available. Consider subscribing to the weekly blog and tuning into the Chestnut Industry Podcast, Branching Out. That was unitedchestnuts.com.
Let's talk about there's a tree. Oh, there's a tree being named after your dad. Uh,
so years ago my dad, through cross pollination and grafting and lots of hard labor, he developed a new cultivar that we hoped, and that's called Lorraine. We got a hold of the Chestnut Registry out in Connecticut, and my dad was able to register it then. I then when I came back from Romania, I started getting more involved with the chestnuts, and I thought, you know what? I like this tree. It had some characteristics that the other ones didn't. And through cross-pollination and grafting and whatever I all did, I came up with a new tree, new cultivar, that its claim to fame is that if it starts dropping the nuts on Monday, it's done by Friday.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so when I sent all this DNA material off to University of Missouri, they got back with me earlier or last week to let me know they found out because I didn't know the exact genetics behind that tree. I do now, and so now I'm going to be able to register it, and we're going to call it Bruce, named after my dad. So we're going to plant Dad right alongside of Mom.
That is just congratulations. I mean, that's a mammoth accomplishment and lots of years of learning that's resulting in that. So yeah, okay, that's really nice. Um, anyway, so talking about Bruce, your dad, he was involved in forming the Chestnut Growers Inc. in Michigan, the one of the largest co-ops on the U.S. Um, you're not involved in that now because I think you have a little bit of a change of philosophy. But what can you remember about his involvement in helping start that?
So my dad, along with a number of other farmers in Michigan, having the same exact problem. What do we do with all these nuts? They got together and they formed Chestnut Growers Inc. And the their job was to figure out how they were going to market all these nuts. Well, as any institution goes, sometimes it becomes a little political, and my nuts are going to be harvested before yours, and all of that, and the rules got to the point where my dad just could not agree with all of that, and so he pulled out, and we became one of the few independents. Now there are more of them now, but we were one of the first independents to pull out to do how we thought was best for
Mm-hmm.
our situation. And
Yeah.
Chestnut Growers Inc., as you said, they are the largest one in the US. Everything they do is pretty much top notch.
Yep.
I have no qualms about them. It's a good place for all those guys that don't want to market their own nuts. It's a good place to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree. Roger Blackwell and all everyone's involved in that's doing a great job. But there is another way to do it, and that's maybe not giving as much as your profit away to an organization. You have to do more things yourselves. And so I wanted to share this concept that I'm working on right now that I'm pretty excited about. So we're developing a subscription-based e-commerce and branding platform that will handle marketing, even micro websites for the smaller growers, especially that just don't maybe have the experience or the desire to promote their product in the digital landscape, which is going to be more and more important as we work to educate consumers about this product. So that's one way is to using technology, but the other is, like you said, just make it a really personal thing that you're don't you go out and talk to lots of people?
So as you see, I'm wearing our sweatshirt. That's got our farm and what we do. I also have my own business cards that talk about the farm, and on the back is the information where we're located. These cards are made out of wood. Some of them are made out of chestnut, believe it or not.
Oh my gosh.
One of my clients loves chestnuts. He has a business of veneer, and we trade chestnuts for veneer or for business cards. It works great. I also in in the beginning of marketing, I brought some chestnuts over here. We have a chain grocery store, like there are chain grocery stores everywhere. So I
Mm-hmm.
went to this one that's close to me and I said, "Hey, I'd like to introduce to you some chestnuts." He said, this was in 1st of October. He said, "Scott, it's too early in the year and the chestnuts I've been getting from Europe are so bad, my people don't want them anymore." I said, "Well, tell you what, I will give you this bag. Just try it." He said, "It's too early in the year." And I said, "You got nothing to lose. I'm giving it to you." He said, "Well, I can't do that. I'll buy it." He bought one bag. 3 days later, he called me back. It's gone. So he became my first store. And then he said, "You need to contact all the other stores in this chain." There are 19 stores in the chain. I'm in 17 of them.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
And,
great.
and I
Fantastic.
and I deliver to all the stores. I don't just warehouse them to somebody and they deliver them. I know the produce managers in every store.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's kind of what it's going to take, in each of us in our own area, to get out and talk to people. If they're not going to magically sell themselves.
right.
Um,
Everybody's got a farmer's market that's close by them.
yeah,
Everybody does. Go there and try it. You've got nothing to lose.
absolutely. Okay, so let's see here. We were talking earlier about that you have to be passionate to do this because it's a lot of work. Um, you spend 24/7 thinking about this?
No, maybe 27, but not 24.
Okay. I
But
know
every
it's a
chestnuts, the conversation comes up every day, whether it's at my job where I work or at home or on the phone with somebody like you or whoever.
yeah,
Um, it's just we had company last night and chestnuts came up. Now they happen to be Europeans, they're from Hungary, but the topic came up. And
yeah.
you can tell when someone enjoys what they do because that's all they talk about.
I know it. It's the saying is you don't have to tell yourself to think about something you're passionate about. It's just there in your mind. And it's interesting that there's a lot of people involved in this little chestnut niche market and business that are just so passionate about it, because there's an opportunity. I travel a lot for my corporate role, and everywhere I go, I ask people like, "Have you eaten chestnuts? What do you know about them?" And it's just like 90% of the time they only know the song. And so if each of us in our sphere of influence can continue to say, this is why this is such a fantastic product, you should try it. We're going to change how many people eat chestnuts in the United States. And that is
Yes.
thrilling.
Yeah, so one of the things that we have done to promote ourselves is that we have two Christmas tree farms that are close enough that we go visit them. My dad and I and my daughter, we would go there. We'd set up a table inside the shop, and as people came through to buy their Christmas tree and drink hot chocolate and hot dogs, we had chestnuts there that we were roasting to promote that festive occasion. And there were people that came through, never had one. Do you want to try one? No. Why would you not want to try one? Well, I don't know what
Yeah.
it tastes like. Well, try it. It doesn't hurt you. And so they would taste one and go, oh, yeah, I'll buy a pound. And so dad started that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And to this day, we still do it.
Yeah. He's totally a pioneer. Okay, here's another topic is that I understand that you are taking over responsibilities of cataloging cultivars of chestnuts in the United States from Dr. Sandy. That's a big deal. So tell us about that.
So years ago, when my dad developed this tree called the rain, he thought it was a good enough cultivar that he should somehow let the information get out there to other growers. I'm not sure how he found the Connecticut Chestnut Registry, but he did. And in his conversations with Dr. Sandy, um, he explained what he did, how many years he had into it, what what made that tree unique. And Dr. Sandy said, that's great. We'll go ahead and register that tree. After after some years, when I got into it, I'm developing this tree of myself. Well, I wanted to register it, and I didn't know who Dr. Sandy was, and I can't even pronounce her last name. It's so long. And so I did get a hold of her and asked if my dad had a certificate or something that he had received for registering this chestnut tree. And she said no, she didn't do that. But she said that might be a good idea, like a diploma for the tree or whatever it was. So it was then I had talked to her I found out about her because I didn't know. And she said she's getting older in age and she's been doing this a long time. And I asked if there was someone to pick up the ball, and she said no. I said, you need a volunteer? She said yes. And so as of January 24, I became the register for the Connecticut Chestnut Registry.
Yeah, that is amazing. And thank you on behalf of all of us that are continue to learn and everything. How many different chestnut cultivars do you think there are around the globe?
Well, if you take a look on the list, yeah, they're if you look on the list, which you can get on it, it's a public site. You'll see they're from China and everywhere. There's a couple of hundred of them.
Mhm.
I don't think they would all grow well in every location throughout the United States. Some are northern, some are southern. Uh, but the ones that we have chosen do really well here in the part of Michigan just north of Grand Rapids.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's exciting. And just to think that for several hundred, that two of them are from your family, you
Yeah, it's
know?
exciting.
Yeah, that's neat. Um, Another thing about this chestnut community is the focus in many cases on family. And considering that, your mom and dad got started and you were a little boy, so now how do things look at the current operation and your future?
So with my daughter lived very close to my parents. And so dad pulled her alongside, or she volunteered because dad was getting older. And she was helping out in the orchard with mowing and grafting and tree trimming and of course picking up nuts. And then as I got more involved, we began to groom her to pick up the ball after we drop it. And my boy is also involved. So we mow grass together, we pick up nuts together, we trim trees together. I this year put up a new facility, a 30 by 60 building for processing chestnuts. And I have, of course, it stores the harvester inside, but I also have another device that's called a 3-in-1 or magic tree. It's a chestnut grater, also came from Italy. You pour the nuts in it and it grades them out according to size. Saves a lot of work. The machine, any grower that has 1,000 pounds can afford to buy this machine from Italy. It's $3,200, everything included.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And then you have a new toy too, right? What's
Yeah,
that?
my new toy was not because I wanted one, it was because of necessity. Last year we had a lot of small chestnuts I couldn't get rid of. And so my boy started reaching out to local breweries, and we found a couple that said they'd take them, but they got to be peeled. Well, I wasn't going to peel all them chestnuts by hand. That's a lot of work. And so I got a hold of Alibaba out of China, which, oh well. And they sent me a chestnut peeler, and I was skeptical. I put some nuts in it, and because all the information was in Chinese, I didn't know how to run the thing. And first batch all came out shredded. The second batch came out less shredded. And by the time I got it all figured out, I got it down that it does probably a 95% husking job or peeling job of the nut. Does a good job.
Yeah,
And
no.
it's not that expensive. It was $230, I think.
Well, yeah, and if it continues to expand, ease of operation and more sales, then those things are worth it.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I forget the term that you use, diversification, I guess, within your industry. You got to find, I can sell fresh nuts all over the place, but I've got these other ones. What do I do with them? And so you got to reach
mhm.
out and find a different market. I have not yet tried a chestnut beer. I probably will eventually, but the ones that have made it says pretty good.
Yeah, we sold some to a brewery and they sent us a bottle of it. It was really good. Um, but yeah, the applications, I mean, I say this all the time, as more and more product comes online, we have to diversify who's buying that. And that starts with chefs, home cooks, nutritionists, like all that. It's a big job to get that message into these population groups. But I mean,
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
exciting. It's exciting at the same time.
My wife is
Oh,
European and she's from Romania. And growing up on chestnuts over there versus eating the ones that we grow on our farm, she says, not just ours, because I've introduced her to some other farmers that have chestnuts. She said, Michigan chestnuts are way better than the European ones.
yeah. Well, fantastic. Um, Okay, so we talked about the family and that, I love this idea that we're creating legacies for generations to come because these trees live a really, really long time. Um, so in closing, I mean, you're a wealth of information, and so I appreciate you sharing just the high level. And we do look forward to coming out to your place and shooting some videos and sharing it with the community. But just think reflect on what you're doing, what are some of the most exciting things for you and why you're committed to the future of chestnut farming?
The the growth of the industry is exciting. Um, and that's only happening because the little people find out about the big people and they come and they eat their chestnuts and say, well, I want to put a couple in my yard, which is fine. And that happens quite often. But what I enjoy is that when our U pickers come out to the orchard and they bring people that they've told about it, so that they are our advertisement for us. They'll bring kids and they'll bring picnic lunches, and to be able to have that one-on-one chit chat with whether the Japanese, because we have a lot of Asians come to our farm. I would say 70% are Asian, and we eat their food that they bring, and they invite us to sit down with them, and we just have one-on-one. It's a good relationship thing. That's what I enjoy. The commercial stuff, okay, we make money doing that, but the relationships that we build with these U pickers, it's just great.
Yeah. I think that's why we call it a chestnut community, because it kind of is, it's not like soybean, where you go with huge equipment and harvest it. This is something where in many cases people are coming out and they're seeing what you've done and they're appreciating it, and that part's rewarding too. And a little bit of cash isn't a bad thing always.
Right, and this camaraderie between growers, we have a couple of other growers that are close enough to us that if they run shy on nuts, they'll send their U pickers to us.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
yeah, and so we share back and forth.
Yeah, there's absolutely synergies. And every time I think the Bob Staleys and the Greg Millers and all of the people that take the time to educate the newer growers. And that's part of the reason for this podcast and the things that we're doing, is just to help and give back to those that have helped us. So, well, just a privilege to know you. I look forward to seeing your farm, and thank you for taking time this morning to join me here.
It was my great pleasure.
All right. You have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to Branching Out, Growing Together. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more inspiring stories and expert tips. Join us next time and keep branching out.